Welcome everybody to this video lecture for Kinesiology 320, Theory of Physical Education. And in this presentation, I want to share with you some things that make a good physical educator. And actually, these are things that will make you a good teacher regardless of the subject or the grade level you plan to teach. So in no particular order, some of the qualities or characteristics that go into making a good physical educator begins with the ability to set high expectations for your students. This is not something that's easily done because what you don't want to do is set your expectations too high where students are going to experience what we call learned helplessness, which means they'll struggle, but they'll find difficulty or inability to meet some of those expectations. And what that does is deter students from actually learning and cause them to dislike physical education. At the same time, you don't want to make them too easy for students to reach because then they become bored and they don't work through a challenge in order to learn. And so there is no learning when the expectations are too low. So understanding how to set high expectations for students to reach, to work hard for challenges in order for them to develop a new skill is difficult to do, but it takes time and it's a good quality to have. Number two, a good physical educator has clear written objectives. Now, first of all, understand the difference between objectives and goals. And objectives are small little challenges or activities or expectations that you have. A goal is the end result, the culminating activity, the reason that you're working through those objectives. So the objectives are kind of a roadmap to reach your goal. And being able to write those out in student-friendly language so that students have a good, clear understanding of what they need to do in order to reach the goal helps them. It helps you articulate that. It helps you to share that with parents, with administrators, and it just makes you a better instructor. Number three, a good physical educator is organized, knows how to plan and prepare, and this is evident through lesson planning. Being able to look towards the end result, we kind of do this backwards planning thing where we figure out what we want the students to ultimately be able to achieve at the end of a particular time frame, and then work backwards to figure out how we're going to get there. That's one way of being organized. Structuring your class time, understanding what things are going to take away from class time, whether it be students in a pull-out program, students who are absent, students who are having other struggles, any other days that actually cut into physical education instruction. Being able to foresee some of those issues coming down the line and planning for them so that you make instruction improved for the student is a good quality to have. Also, a good physical educator is able to engage all of the students and challenge them to look at issues in a different way or in a variety of ways. And so rather than just kind of presenting them with a bunch of drills, we call drill and kill, being able to keep students engaged throughout an entire lesson, and that means actively engaged. So they have something to do. They're physically working. They have challenges. They understand that those challenges are going to lead towards an end result. And so being able to keep their attention span so that they don't get distracted, they don't become complacent, they don't become bored, or they don't turn away and affect motivation is something that's challenging to do, but it must be done in order to make instruction effective. Number five, a good physical educator is able to form strong, positive relationships with the students, and not only with the students, but with the parents as well. It's important to use your parents as advocates for you in the classroom because they will be your biggest supporters if you get them on your side and get them to understand what you're trying to do within your classroom and how it's going to benefit their child. So being able to form those positive relationships also includes listening to students, being able to socialize the students, being able to understand what students are experiencing outside of the classroom, what challenges or problems and issues that they face when they're outside of your class, when they're outside of school, and being able to relate to them. So engaging students and being able to challenge them to meet some of the goals and objectives that you set for is important. Forming strong, positive relationships with students and parents, in addition to being a master of your subject. And those are going to work hand in hand to help you out. Understanding what you need to do. Now, you may not be going to school to specifically be a single subject physical educator, but understanding physical education, understanding how and why the body moves, understanding what students need to overcome in order to learn a new skill and be able to apply that skill, it all goes into being a master of that subject. So regardless of what you teach, especially those in liberal arts, you really need to be a master of all your subjects. Because you're teaching everything. Secondary teachers need to just master one particular subject. So For the liberal studies students, it's important that you understand everything that goes into teaching and learning so that you're able to plan exactly what needs to be done. You understand the challenges students are going to face, and you know your subject matter so that when you realize students are having difficulty learning or comprehending or applying a particular skill, you can understand how to modify that, how to revise that, and teach it or explain it in a different way. A good physical educator desires to improve. I mentioned in class what I call the dinosaurs, those teachers who've been teaching for years and think their way is the only way. Students learn differently. There are different modalities, there are different strategies, there are different styles of teaching, all of which are going to affect students differently. And so understanding that goes into personal learning, continuing your education, continuing to figure out are there opportunities for staff development, professional development? All those things are important for the educator, not just for, teaching your classroom, but for ongoing learning, because learning is continuous. It's not something that you just, you get one thing and you have to stop learning. You need to be able to apply a variety of methods and approaches to students so that you are better and more effective as an educator. A good physical educator provides meaningful feedback, and this is the probably most key, important component to any physical education lesson. Rather than just allowing students to engage in something, being able to observe your students, recognize those that are having flaws or performing a skill incorrectly, and being able to provide that feedback. And there are several forms of feedback that sends students a message as to whether or not they're on track, whether or not they need help. How you say things is important to students because some students aren't able to take constructive criticism. And so you have to explain things in a way that it's going to continue to motivate them and encourage them rather than beat them down. And so providing feedback throughout a lesson, it can be specific one-on-one feedback, it can be group feedback, it can be a high five if students are doing something correctly. But being able to have that ongoing instructional communication within a lesson is key in physical education. A good teacher also has what they call passion and reason. They really feel passionate about what they're doing. They do love students. They do understand the importance of instruction and learning, and that comes through a lot of enthusiasm, motivation from the teacher's perspective, and being able to understand students' challenges and student performance and what students need to do to overcome some of those things. So having that love of teaching, that love of kids is important with your passion and your instructional approaches to the classroom. Number 10, a good physical educator treats students as consumers of knowledge. Imagine that you have something that's extremely vital, that's extremely important, that students absolutely need. They may not know they need it, they may not want to know it at the time, but you have to treat them as consumers of knowledge because you have something that's important for them that's going to be beneficial to them. In the physical education setting, you want to equip them with some skills that's going to make them feel confident and proficient and performing any type of physical activity. And so it's important that you take a look at that from the student's perspective and try to convey what you have. It's almost like being a salesman, convey what you have, which is the knowledge and the skills and the ability to teach and help students learn. Convey that in a way that students are going to buy into it and realize this is information I need to know. And part of that goes into tying in what happens in the classroom with what can happen outside the classroom. A good physical educator also listens to students. We talked about the hidden messages, some of the things that students say, questions the students. So through Q&A, being responsive, being understanding. And that not only goes for the teacher to student relationship, but also kind of being reflective on your own, looking at things after the fact, saying, okay, I did this went right, this didn't go right. How can I modify it? What things can I say differently? What things can I do differently? And so listening to the students, because they will say things that give you a good idea as to whether or not they are enjoying or whether or not they understand something. And so having that time within a physical education lesson of Q&A to really kind of connect with students, to tap into some prior knowledge, to figure out what they know, what they don't know, and being able to revise and modify your instruction that improves student learning is important. A good physical educator goes into something with some flexibility, any type of lesson, any type of classroom. So not having a fixed agenda, not saying to yourself, this is what I want and I'm going to get there by any means necessary. But because kids are flexible, kids are going to make you laugh, they're going to make you cry, they're going to come in with a variety of issues and concerns and cares, and these are some things you need to take into consideration while you're providing that instruction. So being able to be flexible, because the educational system is going to have to be flexible. Students are going to be flexible, which means you can't go in there with a rigid approach and try to force something upon the students. You have to kind of provide a give and take. A good physical educator has style and personality. Letting students know that you're more than just that teacher, you're a human being. It's funny because a lot of students used to see me outside of the classroom and they look at me strangely. They don't know how to approach me. They don't know what to say to me. And they look at me as if I'm not supposed to be out, whether it be at a mall or movies or anything else. They look at me as if you're only supposed to be in the classroom. But having your style and personality displayed within the classroom helps you to develop a better rapport with your students. It helps to give them the idea that my teacher is human. My teacher has flaws. My teacher has problems. My teacher has issues and concerns. It doesn't mean you go in there and you talk about those things, but your style, your personality should show through to improve the relationship you have with your students. A good physical educator, a good teacher in general, is reflective. I mentioned being able to look back on a lesson, being able to look back on the things that you've done, being able to modify and revise, and always looking for an opportunity to improve. Even when things go well, there's always something you can do that's going to be better for some students. And so being reflective means looking back on assessment practices, looking back on instructional practices, and just kind of figuring out how the lesson went and improving each lesson day by day or each time that you teach that lesson. A good physical educator needs to have a sense of humor. Kids are going to make you laugh. Kids want to laugh. They want to enjoy themselves. And that goes back into being who you are, just letting your personality show. If you go into teaching and you have no sense of humor and you want to be this Marine drill sergeant type, students are not going to respond well to that. They want to know who you are. They want to feel comfortable and competent in your classroom. And being humorous, being able to laugh at the things that they say and do is going to help break down some of those barriers that students have and some of that anxiety that students have. And it's tough to find that balance between being a teacher and not being a friend. I know a lot of teachers say, I want to be a friend to my students. You're not there to be their friend. You're there to be their educator. You're there to be their teacher, to be their provider. And trying to find that balance may be difficult to do, but letting your personality show through is going to be helpful. A good physical educator actually cares, nurtures, and wants to develop the minds and talents of students and really has a passion for that. And so knowing that you're going into a teaching profession that all these students are going to have their own challenges, their own problems, and a lot of them will be manifested in the classroom. Understanding that nothing is designed to be a personal attack. Students are always going to be going through something, and it's important for you to understand that. And that shows that you care. That shows that you are nurturing them. You are a steward of those students. They're in your classroom. They're being entrusted into your care for you to develop, to teach, and provide for. And so it's important that you understand how to actually care for your students, to nurture your students, and what that looks like from an instructional standpoint. Good physical educator demonstrates effective leadership, and that's being able to take command, take charge of a lesson of a large group of students, but doing so in a way that you're not only providing boundaries for those students, but you're allowing them to suffer whatever natural consequences there are if they don't follow the guidelines. And so that's part of being an effective leader, is disciplining students. And discipline is not always related to something negative. Discipline actually means teaching. And so being able to teach and do so in a way that students look up to you is a learning skill in itself, but demonstrating that effective leadership in the classroom is vital. And sometimes it takes years in order to reach that point, but always knowing that that is going to make you a better instructor, that is going to help your relationship with the students, and the students are going to respond better to that, regardless of whether they believe it or not. They do need those boundaries, and so being able to demonstrate effective leadership is important. A good teacher understands the importance of teamwork and collaboration. You can't go into everything alone and be successful isolating yourself from everything else. Being a good educator means reaching out to those teachers, the veteran teachers who have done it before, who have been in your shoes, who know how to overcome some of the challenges of the teaching profession, and reaching out to them, maintaining some communication and collaboration with those veteran teachers and learning from them. That is part of not only self-growth and improvement, but being able to be an effective teacher in the classroom. And a good physical educator knows how to have fun. I mean, it's physical education. Students want to move. They want to enjoy themselves. They want to have fun. But keep in mind that fun should not be the sole objective or goal of a lesson. The instruction is, and the learning part is, but they do that in a fun way, being able to enjoy those experiences and helping students to learn from all those experiences that they're facing is a good quality to have as a physical educator. And one thing with these 19 statements, characteristics, or approaches to teaching that they're lacking. A good teacher not only has all of those qualities and characteristics, but one of the things that those are missing is pedagogy, the ability to actively, effectively, and meaningfully teach the students. And so what pedagogy is an art, it's a science, it's understanding all the different dynamics that are at work that's going to be able to either hinder or improve the process of learning. And learning, there's a lot involved in that. Students will go through a lot of processing of information in order to actually learn. And so setting up your classroom environment that facilitates that learning is important. And I would always tell, whether it's a teacher that I was mentoring or a program that I was trying to support, talking to administrators, just being an advocate for the profession, I would always say, you haven't taught until students are able to successfully perform a learned skill in their own realistic setting. And so when a student comes back and they say, well, because of you, I was able to apply this in this particular situation, or I was able to confidently participate in recreational activities outside of school, that is when you know that you have taught them and they have actually learned, when they're able to apply something. And you can do this in the classroom as well as expected outside the classroom, but that sense of pedagogy is the key component. And this is what separates regular educators from good quality educators, understanding what goes into that art and that science of teaching. And so knowing how to use a variety of methods, knowing how to use a variety of techniques, understanding assessment and how to test students and check whether or not they're actually learning or they understand that process of learning. Setting up those healthy barriers, creating a safe, nurturing environment, making instruction understandable for the students and applicable for them so that they see the connection between what's happening in the classroom with what's happening in the real world. Helping students to learn appropriately, practice a skill over and over and over again without focusing on a game type situation, all goes into what makes a good quality physical educator. So all of these things are good qualities to have, good characteristics to start developing. Some of them you need to work towards as you're in the profession, but understanding what goes into making a good physical educator is important initially. So that was just about it for this presentation. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Take care for now.